Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Fan OCC, where I take an original creature concept and design it in my own unique style. Today's concept is coming from a concept artist by the name of Lyle from Toronto, Canada, and the piece is called Traveller. And I'll leave a link below to all of his portfolios as well as his social medias, so you can go check out all of his amazing artwork. I highly recommend that you do. He is a very talented artist. Before we jump into the video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. All your help is very, very much appreciated. I want to thank everybody, and with that being said, let's jump straight into ZBrush. So inside of ZBrush, I started off with a human mannequin from inside ZBrush tools, and I manipulated it to bend the arms down using the mask tool, and then I cut away the legs and hands of the character as I wouldn't need these for this concept. After which I dynameshed the character to close off all the holes, and then cleaned up the general area, and then started using the move brush to start pulling this character's features into the design that you can see on the right hand side at the bottom there. So just kind of manipulating the shapes until I got a really good sort of base model. After that, I used the clay build-up brush and started to define certain areas, as well as using the damp standard brush to cut in those muscle shapes along the torso. And then going with the clay build-up brush, I started to pick out those muscular areas of this character, paying particular attention to the concept in the bottom right hand corner. For the back, I had to simply make it up as I went along, and I used some references from online of athletic builds, people with athletic builds, to fill in the gaps. But I wasn't too worried about that because the majority of this concept will be seen from the front, so it was much more important that I get the front looking like the concept rather than the back. Speaking of concepts, this one is coming from a creature concept artist by the name of Lyle from Toronto, Canada, and this piece is called The Traveller. And if you enjoy this concept and you want to see more of his artwork, then please go check out the links below to his other social media sites. His ArtStation portfolio as well has some really amazing looking creature designs, mostly alien in nature, but very unique and very cool to look at and grab some references for your own style. Intrigued me about this concept was the similarities to a very, very popular film from the 1980s, which will become to be known throughout the world as the most iconic sci-fi action film ever made. I am of course talking about the film Predator, released in 1987, directed by John McTiernan with the help of the godfather of creature artists, Stan Winston. It is the Americana of action sci-fi films that you will ever see, with a huge cast of actors such as Arnold Schwarzenegger, Shane Black, Carl Weathers, Jesse Ventura, Bill Duke, Richard Chavez and Sonny London, all of whom are hunted by an unseeable enemy known as the Predator. This is clearly a 10 out of 10 film, and I would highly recommend people go watch it. What's even better than the film though is the documentary on how the film was made, titled If It Bleeds, We Can Kill It, The Making of Predator. It is about half an hour long. I'll leave a link in the description box below for it. Definitely go and watch it. Watch the whole thing, not just the alien creature design stage, but the whole documentary. It is just so refreshing to see this kind of documentary about a film that most people didn't think had a chance in hell of actually making any money. So returning to the concept, I'm still working on the Dynamesh stage, very much the blockout stage. And I'm now just opening up the mouth a little bit, trying to get that mouth open so I can get some teeth in there. And you'll see I'm just using the basic brushes still, clay build-up, damn standard, just trying to keep it as simple as possible. Now I'm adding an eyeball into the head, and what I'll do is just append a sphere and then duplicate that over to the other side. This is actually really helpful at this stage to do, rather than a later stage when you'll have a more final model. You'd want to get those eyeballs in place so you can get the face around it sculpted to fit them better. It's no worse feeling than sculpting a face without having any of the eyeballs in there or the teeth, and then all of a sudden you find that the eyeballs don't fit. And now I'm just going along and defining some more shapes around the body using the dam standard, going back to the head, using some clay brush, to build up some of those areas in the top of the head there. And as you can see, just working those eyeballs out now. So I've duplicated them, and I'm going to start to create the eyelids for this character. Just going to sculpt away using the clay buildup until I get a nice eyelid. The reason I do it this way is because there's not enough detail on the topology on the head model, so I like to break it up into little chunks. So what I'll do is I'll always make the eyelids separate to the head until I'm happy with everything, and then merge it all together and then sculpt in those details later. So I'll soon be coming up to the part where I start to add in the teeth, and the easiest way I know how to do this is to append a cylinder and then just pinch off one end so it's sharper on one end, and so it's more like a diamond shape, and then move those teeth into place inside the mouth one at a time, and duplicate, rotate using the gizmo tool until I'm happy with it. So you can see there, I'm just pinching that tooth. Now I'm just moving it into place, and I'll just duplicate and rotate and duplicate and rotate and just move it until I've filled in the gaps. Once I'm happy with one side, because I normally only do just the one side, then I'll just mirror over to the other side, and then I'll just change the orientation of the teeth in the very center a little bit, just to give it that little bit of asymmetry. After which I'll start to just work around the face again, making sure that I ground or build up those areas around the teeth so it makes it look like it fits better. Now taking a look at the concept, I found that the ears were a bit sticking out a bit too much, so I just pulled them in a little bit, rotate them so they were more flush against the head. And as I said earlier, I merged everything together, so I've merged the eyelids, and now I'm just going to sculpt some more detail into the eyelids. I made sure to make the Dynamesh higher as well, like the resolution higher, so I can get a little bit more detail in there to work with later on. A lot of the focus was mainly in the head, and then I started to pull away and start working on the body a little later. It's good to move around the model as much as possible. Like I keep saying in every video, you do not want to be stuck in one place too long, because you can lose the overall image that you're trying to portray. So now you can see I'm going into the body. I'm using the dam standard. I'm just going to build in some of those cracks in the skin. It's kind of difficult to know what that skin is made of. I can see that the top of the head is actually made out of some sort of crustacean sort of shell, but the body itself, I wasn't quite sure whether or not it was hard surface or if it was soft surface. So I kind of went for a little bit of in between. So it's a sort of flexible hard surface, that you might find on crabs or crustaceans like shellfish or something like that. That was the kind of idea that I had when doing the skin. So as I go along, I'm just trying to keep it really simple, keep it really interesting, getting some more shapes in those areas that I've defined with the dam standard, just not being too precious with the model, especially at this stage. This stage is still in the dam standard stage. I haven't actually retopoed anything at all. That comes a little later. But now you can see I'm using the 2 brush that comes with ZBrush, and I'm just going to add some hair / dreadlocks. I'm not quite sure what they were, so I just kind of made them like hair strands, like big clunks of hair strands, kind of like dreadlocks. And I'm just placing them in place as per the reference shows, and then I'll just duplicate that and then just move it around, duplicate, move around. For the actual top of the head of hair, I decided to just make a sphere and Dynamesh it, pull it so it was a bit longer, and then that would be like the bulk of the hair. And then I just used a dam standard brush and just started to sculpt some line work going down it so it looked more like hair strands. I wasn't too precious with the hair, to be honest. I know that you can spend a lot of time doing really intricate looking hair in sculpting, but because he's facing forward and most of the hair is in the back, I didn't spend too much time actually doing the sculpt for the hair. If this was a 3D printable mesh, then I would actually go back, do some updates to it and make it look more realistic, make it look more fun as well and cleaner. But because this is a concept sort of sculpt with a render, I was happy with the way that I was doing it this way. Using dam standard again to do the hair follicles on the sort of braids or dreadlocks, just giving it some more shape to it rather than just being a long tube that sticks out of his head. And I was actually told by the artist Lyle that I could interpret some of the parts if it wasn't clear, so that's great. That's actually really cool to hear from a concept artist. I was able to change it a little bit here and there. So I wanted to make sure that there was some strands that were thinner and just sort of loosely hanging, so I just made some really light strands that might be blowing in the wind or hanging loosely, looser than the hairs around it. With that, the majority of the blockout stage is done, and we'll soon be moving into the detail stage. Now, the detail stage, I tend to do it off camera, but I do retopo the character just using a quick Z remesh inside of ZBrush and then project all that detail onto a cleaner version of the model. You can bypass this stage and keep doing it in Dynamesh, but you'll find that you'll probably burn your computer out because of the amount of polygons you'll get every time you try to refresh with the higher resolution. So I highly recommend that you don't do that. So as you can see here, I have changed the material. Once I'm happy with the model, I tend to change the material to this material instead, which is just a basic material inside ZBrush. It comes with the ZBrush as well. What I'm doing right now is using the clay brush to break up the surface of the skin, because we all know that it's a very strong, muscular looking character, but we don't want the skin to be smooth. We don't want it to look boring. So I find that using the clay brush very slightly and very lightly going over those muscle areas will just break up the surface of those muscles and give that sort of feel of skin on top of muscle rather than just pure muscle on the character. Of course, you don't want to go too hard or too heavy-handed using the clay brush. You want to use just enough to suggest or just enough to break up that surface. You don't want to destroy all the hard work that you've done but underneath. And if you do feel like you have gone too much, then you can just grab the dam standard like I've done now and just go and pick out some of those harder edges or the edges to cut into a bit more, define a bit more with the dam standard. So very soon I'll start working on the face, but I wanted to make sure the body was covered for this first pass of the detail stage, where I go in and I just define some of those areas with some basic brushes before I go in and use alpha maps to help get some more detail on the actual surface of the skin. So now you can see I am working on the head and the face using the dam standard again, just to pick out some more details that are inside the concept and define some of those shapes a bit more as well, because you kind of lose a little bit of that detail when you project from the Dynamesh version, and you want to get some of that detail back in now that you have a lot more polygons to work with. And don't ever feel like you need to rush this part. This is the part where you can take your time and really get those details that you want onto your model. Now that we have a nice clean version and we don't have to worry about Dynameshing it or losing detail through Dynamesh, we can really go in there and detail this character's face and body as long as we like. We don't have to rush at all. So as you can see, I'm just using the same brushes, basic brushes, to fill in the face. Using the clay brush to build in some more of those sort of flappy folds on the skin. I'll soon be using the standard brush along the neckline, as you can see here, with the dam standard, to grab some more of those wrinkles underneath the neck there, to make it look more realistic, where the wrinkles of the neck would happen when with this type of character. And I might have gone a little bit overboard on it in some places, but because it's a concept piece, it doesn't really matter too much. Anything that we mess up here inside of ZBrush, we can fix later on inside of Photoshop. This is just a way of getting a creature made as fast as possible inside of 3D so that we get it inside of Photoshop, add some VFX to it, add some brush strokes to it to make it look really good for a portfolio piece. So now you can see I'm using alpha map to add some detail to the skin, and this map was just used around the whole model. I really didn't want to spend too much time adding details upon detail upon detail to this character. I just wanted to get a little bit on there so that it would broke up the surface of the skin, so it wasn't so clean and precise with the model. You wanted to differentiate it a little bit, the surfaces. So just going in, adding some wrinkles, and then after that I just went in with the dam standard. You can see there I had a few alphas, but I just went in with the dam standard after adding all these alphas and just picked out some key areas where I wanted the wrinkles to be a little bit more deeper in some areas and less deep in other areas, just to break up the monotony of the alphas that I just used. So as a final stage inside of ZBrush, I started to add a little bit of color, polypaint to our creature. This just helps later on inside of Photoshop, where I start to composite the actual final image. It just gives me a good base to work with rather than going in there with just a black and white image of a render and then having to add color on top. I decided to add some color to the character inside of ZBrush. And it's very basic. It's not over exaggerated textures or anything like that. It's just putting some color down on the character that mimics the concept that we have in the bottom right hand corner. I think I went a little bit too blue on the headdress, so I have to possibly pull that back, but maybe not. We'll see how it goes inside of Photoshop later on. So I was just adding some blue using a very basic brush, standard brush with no alphas or anything, just the RGB channel. And I'm just going in and adding some rough colors everywhere, making sure the eyes are dark, the nose is dark, the mouth is red, that sort of thing. And just trying to keep to the original concept as much as possible with the sort of patterns on the arms and the skin texture as well. Now, I don't normally paint the eyeballs for this characters or my characters. I tend to just leave that for something to do inside of Photoshop later. Just grab an image from online and just use that as a eyeball for my character. But if I was to make an actual character or creature, then yes, I would definitely I would go in there, sculpt an actual eyeball with all the fixtures that come with an eyeball. But for a simple concept character, I don't think it's necessary. You can do all that sort of stuff later on inside of Photoshop. So as you can see here, I'm just manipulating the eyes a little bit more, just changing the shape of it, more like an oval than a circle. And just going to use some masking techniques inside of a ZBrush to help get some of those crevices where the paint should go, so it looks a little bit dirtier under the sort of crevices in there. It also gives a little bit more depth to the texture that you're painting, and you can use many forms of masking. There's loads of masking tools in there to use. I normally try to keep it to the cavity or the peaks and values, just play around with them, see how you work out with them. They're very good to use to get some changes on your, change of colors on your model, so you can get the interior, the cracks and the sharp edges as well. After the painting is done and the textures are done, we can use the transpose master to pose our character inside of ZBrush. I tend to do this inside of ZBrush because it's just faster for me, especially with a concept piece. You don't really need to have a very good pose unless it's a full-on character that you want to pose, or like from a pose to a more complex pose. Then you might want to take it out of ZBrush, rig it, pose it using rig system. You can also use the rig system inside of ZBrush, but for something like this, which is supposed to be a very quick concept, I tend to just use the masking tool technique, which is where you just mask out areas you don't want to move, and you just move parts you do want to move, and then you rinse and repeat with every single piece that you want to move. It just gives a very quick pose, quick and dirty pose, and you can use the move brush to move sort of areas or muscles that might change when in that sort of pose, or hair in this case that's intersecting with the body. You'll see that I just move those out of the way so they don't sit inside the body. please, by all means, take your time if you want inside this process, or the posing process. The longer you spend in it, the better your results will be. I only do it really quickly because I've done it quite a few times now, and I kind of know what I'm doing, but I've known people to spend hours doing this. So take your time. Once you're happy, hit the transpose button again and it'll pose your character, and then it's onto rendering. And as you can see here, I've already gone ahead and posed the character in a great camera sort of position, portrait position rather than landscape. And I'm just going here and I'm using the light. You can see me adjusting the light there to get the perfect position for the sort of light as well as the shadow. And then once I'm happy with the placement, I'll render that out, and then I'll export those renders to an image sort of format, and then go in and start getting some different matcap materials to use inside of Photoshop later on to help composite the final image. There's certain ones I use more than others, but there's a vast variety of backcaps that I have there to help with bring this character more to life later on. After the matcap rendering, I'll then take some shots for the lighting, and that's just putting it on a blend, turning it to black, fully black, and then rendering out the lights. You can see here, just moving that light around and taking some renders. That's pretty much it inside of ZBrush. The next stage will be inside of Photoshop, so I'll see you there, and we'll finally be doing all the compositing inside of Photoshop and adding extra to the image to sell it as a concept piece. So see you in a minute. Hey guys, if you're interested in learning how to sculpt and composite characters, then visit my online stores for in-depth tutorials, models, brushes, and more. Just follow the links in the description box below. Also, if you enjoy this content, then please like, share, and subscribe for more videos in the future. Now, let's get back to the video. Okay, so inside of Photoshop, I've added all the renders from the ZBrush scene. And now I'm just going to go ahead and start to composite all those renders together to make the final concept. I'm not going to go too much detail on how I actually achieved this. If you want, you can go and check out the link below to an online tutorial I've made on my YouTube channel, where I show you the step-by-step process of how I use Photoshop to create a interesting looking concept. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm just going ahead and I'm masking using the mask tool, using the smooth brush or soft brush, and I'm just masking out areas, adding backgrounds, adding a very basic background. Doesn't have to be anything too fancy. It just has to portray a kind of scene to add our character to, because the main focus of this concept is always going to be the character. And as I go through this process, I'm being mindful to remember that the focus is on the face mostly and part of the torso, but I have actually used a gradient map from the bottom upwards to darken the torso from the bottom upwards, just to emphasize the top half better. And as you can see, still using the masking out, changing the hue and saturation here and there, and then finally coming in closer. Again, I like in ZBrush, in Photoshop, I like to work from a very far distance before I go in and start doing the smaller adjustments. It just gives me a better overview of the image, and that's how I normally work. As I mentioned before inside of ZBrush, that I would go in and I would start to use brushes to fill out the hair areas, and that's just what I did there. And also, as you just saw there, I got an image from online of a goat's eye, and then I just use that as the image for our eye. This just speeds the process up inside of Photoshop. You can see how quickly I'm going ahead and adding those extra elements that I couldn't add inside of ZBrush, just to fill out the final concept. Very soon I'll start to use some images from online that I found to help make the skin look a little bit more interesting, and to also sell the idea of detail on our concept art. This is a great technique to use when you kind of on a sort of time schedule that you need to stick to and you don't have enough time inside of ZBrush to do it, you can go in and you can do most of the stuff inside of Photoshop later on for concepting purposes, obviously. So you can see here, I'm just adding that really nice blue hue detail to the skin, and I've still got some other materials there that I haven't used yet, so I'm just going ahead and looking through everything again, making sure that's all I want in there. And now I'm adding some extra skin detail on the softer yellowy parts there, you can see. It doesn't have to be everywhere, it just needs to be in certain areas to help sell it. Now, of course, you're seeing this video in very high speed. The normal time that would take me to do the actual compositing inside of Photoshop is roughly around 30 to 40 minutes. So yeah, it's still quite a quick process in that regard, but you can spend a lot more time by yourself making sure you refine the character as much as possible and is exactly how you want it to look for a conceptual piece. So as you just saw there, I'm using the hue and saturation to bring some more color into it and to emphasize some areas, using the cloud brush now in the front to hide some of that in front pieces and the bottom, so it looks like he's coming out of the mist. And now I'm just using the adjustment layers to add some more depth to the final image. So this is actually coming up to the very end of the compositing stage. Just a few minor tweaks here and there left to do, but I would like to thank everyone for watching this video. I'd like to thank all my patrons for supporting me. I'd also like to thank Lyle more for letting me use his concept in this video. And if you want, you can go ahead again and see his concepts and his social medias down in the link below. If you can, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. It would be very helpful and much appreciated. It helps me as an artist to continue to bring you videos like this, and I hope that you have enjoyed this video and look forward to showing you the next Fan OCC episode. And thank you very much and take care.